My name is Andy, and together with a magnificent Consone string quartet, we're going to demonstrate some ways in which you can compose new music for a small ensemble. This video is all about texture. Let's start by explaining what texture means in music. When we create music, we combine, mix, and layer sounds together. Texture is the word we use to describe this. Different musical textures can depend on how many instruments are playing at a particular time, or whether the instruments are playing the same, similar, or different ideas over the top of one another, or whether the melodic or harmonic ideas are synchronized across the instruments or not, or how prominent each idea is across the ensemble. Experimenting with different textures can make music more interesting to listen to. Let's explore some different types of texture and hear examples from the Consone Quartet. A monophonic texture is one single melody played by two or more instruments in unison. Unison means at the same time. For example, here's the main melody in Schubert's Death and the Maiden played in a monophonic texture. A monophonic texture has no accompaniment, it is just one melody. Even though the quartet played that melody starting on different Gs, a high one and a lower one, and all played the same tune, it still counts as a monophonic texture. A monophonic texture can be a good choice for when you want to create a memorable tune or emotive musical moment, like the composer Jessie Montgomery does at the very end of her piece called Strum. This is quite a contrast after hearing multiple ideas layered on top of one another earlier, and so makes a bit of a statement at the end. Is there a particular moment in your piece that might suit a monophonic texture? Another type of texture is a homophonic texture. In that example of a homophonic texture, the different instruments play different pitches that move together at the same time. Homophonic means sounding together. The first violin played the melody, but the other instruments played different pitches but using the same rhythm, and this helps build the harmony. Playing different notes together at the same time creates a chord, and homophonic textures are based on chords moving together note by note. So to create homophonic textures in your music, you could have a melody line and then build harmonic accompaniments that complement it. One way to do this is to make sure your melody is played by at least two instruments in the ensemble, but for at least one of these instruments, the whole melody is moved up or down in pitch. This creates chords in your music, which will add depth and colour to your piece. Another way to do this homophonic texture is to have a melody in one instrument and compose chords for the other instruments who are in more of a supportive role. Take a look at this melody that I composed earlier. I composed this melody in the key of C major. This means that I use the notes from the C major scale. Now I could just create a chord for the start of each bar. To do this, I'll create a triad that features the note that's in the melody on the first beat of these bars. Here are our triads from C major numbered 1 to 7. As you can see, at the first beat of this bar, the melody is on C. So the triads that feature C are number 1, 4 and 6. I'm going to choose number 6 and write this under the start of this bar. When we move into the next bar, the melody starts on A. So the triads I can use are number 2, 4 and 6. I'm going to choose number 4 and write this under the start of that bar. And for the last bar of this section, the melody starts on E. So the triads I can use again are numbers 1, 3 and 6. I'm going to choose number 6 again and write that under the start of this bar. Let's hear the string quartet playing this, making my accompanying chords short and spiky. Notice how the different chords and accompaniment I choose contribute to the overall character and mood of the music. Now try applying this process to your melody to create an accompaniment. One way to make music you've created in this way more interesting is to create new chords at different times in the bar and not just on the first beat. To do this, identify one or more occasions when something important happens, which might be a moment when the melody suddenly jumps or something changes in the rhythm. Once you've identified where to put the new chord, notice which note is being used in the melody and what triads you can use that feature that note. So in my example, I'd like to put a chord here because the melody jumps and the note it jumps to is C. So I'm going to create a triad that includes the note C. My choices are 1, 4 and 6. So I'm going to try it with number 6. Now this isn't a fixed rule. You might want to see what the music sounds like using triads that don't feature the note in the melody. Keep experimenting with different chords and combinations to make different patterns until you find a progression that you like. Another type of texture is called polyphonic texture. And polyphonic textures usually have multiple melodies weaving in and out of each other. The melodies move at different times and often the different melodies are equally important. There isn't just one main tune and the rest supporting. There's lots of different ways composers use polyphonic textures. How many independent melodies can you identify in this example? A final device we'll explore in this video for creating texture is something called a counter melody. This is a second melody played at the same time as an original melody, but this counter melody isn't taking over or replacing the main tune, instead it's complementing it. You might want to create a counter melody to add interest to a single melody and chord texture. In a piece called Strum by Jessie Montgomery, the texture she creates between the viola and cello could be described as a melody and a counter melody. She's composed 2 melodies and layered them on top of each other. One way to compose a counter melody is to compose a new tune based on your chord progression. To do this, first of all, decide at what moment you want to introduce a counter melody. Next, you need to work out the chords you are using in that section of music. Let's see how this might work. In this piece, my chord progression is C, F to G to A minor. I now want to list all of the notes that make up these triads. So for chord C, it will be C, E, G. For F, it will be F, A, C, and so on. Now choose one note from each of those triads. For example, in my chord progression, my first triad was a C chord, and that features the notes C, E, G. So I'm going to choose the note C. Now the second triad was an F chord, and that features the notes F, A, C. So I'm going to choose the note F. My third triad was a G chord. That features the notes G, B, and D. So I'm going to pick the note B. And the last chord was an A minor chord. That features the notes A, C, and E. So I'm going to pick the note C again. Next, I'm going to compose a tune that gets me from the note I chose for triad 1, remember that was a C, to get to the note I chose for triad 2, and that was the note F. So I've got to get from here to here. Once I've done this, I can continue the tune and get from the note I chose from triad 2, which was F, to the note I chose for triad 3, which was the note B. And so on until I get to the note I chose for the last chord. Play back your counter melody along with your main melody and ask yourself whether it complements it or if it takes over. To make the texture more interesting and to help the melodies to complement each other, think about the rhythms of your two tunes. If your original melody is written using triplets and quavers, try using triplets and quavers in your counter melody too. It can be helpful to create patterns that often move away from each other also, with one melody moving upwards while the others moving downwards. Most importantly, counter melodies shouldn't take over the original. So what other ways can you ensure that your counter melody doesn't take over but still complements your main tune? Maybe think about the dynamics of your piece. That's the end of this video now, and we hope you've enjoyed thinking about the different ways you could use texture in your piece.